how to use Kahoot and be ready for the real questions later. But let's introduce a little bit about my company and myself. So Gameloft has been established in 2000, and it has 20 years shaping the mobile game industry. Actually, our company was established at the very beginning of the mobile game era. And you can see here, this is the phone of that era, like still with a very small screen, black and white buttons, no internet, no app store. And we was there already at that time. And together for the last 20 years, Gameloft have shaping the way we're doing business in mobile game. And as of today, there are 1.5 million downloads per day from a catalog of 190 games, which is the biggest catalog in the market. It's something nice, but not too, I'm not too proud of, because some other publisher, they have much fewer games, but actually earning a lot more revenue than us. And on my part, I have been joining Gameloft Hanoi in 2011. That's 2 months after we opened the studio. And now I'm the production manager overseeing all of the projects inside the studio. As of today, there are 7 game projects running in parallel. That's a coincidence. You can see here 7 beautiful people. They are not project managers. They are the HR women. So that's coincidence. And today I'm in talk about, my talk will be in 3 parts. The first is about the mobile game landscape. So at least half of you are not very familiar with mobile games. So this is a quick introduction about mobile game and how we do business. The second part is a small reminders about what is the quantitative approach, because maybe what you learn in the class right now doesn't 100% fit with what I think about quantitative analysis. So I will clarify that a bit in this sessions. And finally, the main part is the third part about how we apply the quantitative analysis to monetization, to turn a free game into a money-making machine. So the first part is about the mobile game business landscape. And what I found very surprising when I researched about the game industry is that actually since 2017, mobile game has become the biggest digital entertainment industry in the world. If you think about digital entertainment and you think about music, last year it's made 20 billion USD of revenue, record music, not live performance. For movie, for box office, you have 42 billion USD of revenue. But this for mobile games alone is already make 68 billion USD. And if you count also the games on console like Xbox and PlayStation and on PC, then it's unquestionable that video games is the biggest digital entertainment industry in the world. And during the pandemic of COVID-19 that we are suffering, for movie and for music, everything went down. Of course, people doesn't go to the cinema, and people reduce the money they spend on music streaming. But on video game, everything increased, from the number of players, the number of downloads, the revenue, everything increased a lot during the pandemic. So that's a very huge industry, but it's also extremely competitive and very hard to monetize. So if you imagine that we have all of the publishers and the money that each publisher make, then the curve is like this. For the vast majority of publishers, they make very few or zero money. Only a few companies can make meaningful revenue to remain sustainable revenue for 3-5 years. So it's very rare for a company like Gameloft to stay in the market for 20 years and go through different phase of disruption. Let me show you 3 numbers that show how competitive and tough it is in the mobile games business. 137 That's the number of new games being submitted every day to the App Store. So every day, a gamer can have access to 137 new games, and the total number of games is around 500,000. And for the next number, 98% of mobile game revenue coming from free games. So customer, they come to expect the price of the game to be zero. It's on mobile, it's very hard for you to sell a game as a premium game right now. So how can we make money when we give the game away to people for free? This last number is also very depressing. It's 0.15 USD, so 15 cents. That's the average revenue per daily active user. So for each user, the expected revenue is only 15%, and that is for the top games. The median number is only 0.03. So you can imagine that even if you have millions of players, with this average number, is maybe still not enough to cover the cost of the production of a very complex game. So it's very competitive, it's very big overall, but only the big players win, and it's very tough to monetize. So that's the first part. Let's come back to your mobile phone and try to tackle the next few questions. These questions are for the score, so try to answer correctly and answer fast, okay? Which of these business models bring the biggest revenue for mobile games as of 2019? In-app purchase, selling item in game, advertising, subscription like Spotify, Netflix, or premium, you pay one time for the game. Okay, so many of you think advertising is the main way to earn money, but actually advertising only accounts for around 22% of the total revenue in the industry, and more than 70% of money coming from in-app purchase. So items that you can buy inside the game. So that's also one of the reasons why quantitative analysis is very important. So let's say if you just want to have advertisement in the game, then the more user you have, automatically you have more money. But if you want to sell optional extra items inside the game that user don't really need, they only buy it because they want it, then it's put a lot of importance on understanding your user and offer them the best offering possible. Okay, the next questions. Now that we know that IAP is the most popular, which of these are popular types of in-game items? You can select 3. Okay, a lot of people are being correct here, right? You can both selling weapon and power items. This is pay to win. So you buying power to win over other players. Or you can just buy skin and energy. Game merchandise is also a growing business, but you buy the teddy bear, you buy the t-shirt outside of the game, not inside the game. So this is the leaderboard right now. You still have a lot of, oh, V is the highest climber. Congratulations. Now let's come back to the second part, quantitative analysis. So this is an example of qualitative analysis. So there are 2 main camps in the research method, qualitative and quantitative. This is an example of a focus group playtest. Let's say you are developing a new game and you want to know if the game is fun or not. So how do you define fun? The traditional method is that you give the game to a few of your friends or a few of the players in the target, customer segment, and then you ask them what do they feel. You watch them play, and you notice their reactions, things like that. So it's based a lot on intuition, on experience. It's very subjective because for some people, the definition of fun is very different for each person. So their answer may not be accurate, right? And also there's a lot of problem with cognitive and behavioral errors as human, especially for game designer, because for game designers, they are very attached to their game. It's their idea, it's their love. So they will have a bias towards thinking their game is better than it actually is. So that is qualitative analysis. And it's also very hard to scale. Let's say you can invite a few of your friends, but if your target market is in China or in America, it's very hard for you to gather, to reach the people there, to invite them to test the game for you in a qualitative manner. So another way that we can do it is quantitative analysis. This is when you focus on number and on measurement. And this, to be able to do this, you have to have a proxy. So you cannot have a way to measure fun, which is objective. But another way you can measure is how many levels do the users keep playing the games. So let's say if you have a game of 100 levels and you see that many people drops, they stop playing the game after 3 levels, then it's objectively a bad game because people doesn't keep playing. It doesn't matter if they, what is their definition of fun? If they doesn't keep playing, it means it's not good enough. So it's very, very clear, very objective. And that is also one of the reasons why the business people, they really like quantitative analysis, because it gives them a sense of certainty and a sense of being objective, right? But in fact, I think both of these way of doing analysis and research, it has its own advantage. And normally people do mixed methods, so they do qualitative first and quantitative later, or vice versa, or they switch between the steps, because qualitative help you to explore and uncover very deep and surprising insights that you cannot take from a survey. So for an example, when we want to build a player profile, so we want to build a player profile of different types of players. There is a questions in the survey about why do you play game, right? To be able to be quantitative, then you need to have a list of options that allows the players to choose from to answer the question why they want to, why they play games. But how do you determine the correct list of options? You need the list of options to cover all the different cases that people want to play games. And you cannot just think about your own experience, because other people may have different reasons. So normally what happens is that you have qualitative research when you invite about 50 players and you interview them deeply, talk with them as a human to human, and then they will give you a very long answer about why they play it, and you pick some of the keywords from all the 50 answers to come up with the list of answers. Then you can give this survey to 5,000 people and have a quantitative analysis later. So these two kind of research methods, they work well together rather than just one instead of the other. And recently, you traditionally is for game, because game is art, game is creative. People tend to do more qualitative thinking than quantitative. But recently, I think around the last from 2008, when the iPhone and App Store was introduced, the quantitative methods become really, really popular and important in the games because of three factors: because of data, of tools and of the need. So for data, in the recent years, you can see that there's a huge amount of both accurate and personal data from many places, from the platforms, from the Apple Store, from the Facebook platforms, from surveys, and also from internal tracking. So I'm not sure if you are aware, but for most of the games you are playing, they are recording almost every action you do, what button you press, how long it takes for you to decide to deploy your weapons. Every action in the game is being tracked, and they will use that data to optimize the game progress, to make you hook, to make you addicted to the game, and later on paying money. It also the availability of a lot of tools that make quantitative data gathering and analysis more accessible and easier to be done. So survey tools that allow you to have people to answer questions online. You have video conference. So these days, even in the COVID-19 pandemic and people cannot meet, we can still do interviews via video conference call. And you have Excel, you have Power BI, you have a lot of tools that you can use to gather and analyze data. And finally, is the restatement of the need. The environment is really competitive, and the important thing is a limited amount of whales. So what is whales in video games? We calling the player minnows, dolphin, whale, and mega whales. So based on the amount of money they spend in the games, and most of the monies are brought to the game producers by whales and mega whales. Those are people who pay at least $50 every month. And for mega whales in Aquapati, they are the people who make more than 100K USD in the lifetime. So there are people who play that much money for a game they like, but they are very few. So it's become really competitive for all the companies to compete to get the attention of those rich people who have the money to spend. So that's why the business, they really want a systematic and persuasive methodology that they can use to make decision and use to improve the monetization of the game. So these three factors, the data, the tools, and the need, that they make the quantitative methods really popular this day. Now let's switch gear a bit and come back to the game and see how well do you do in the next few questions. And for all the next questions, choose the correct approach for the method. Likely belongs to either quantitative or qualitative. A deep interview with selected players is quantitative or qualitative? This session seems to be a lot easier. Huh? So we have the majority of people answer correctly. In the deep interview, you can have a treasure of information that quantitative never be able to tell you. When you're asking, you can see the body language, you can see the tone of voice changing, you can gauge the emotion, and you can normally find a lot of surprising insight from the human to human connection. It's a qualitative advantage. How about a survey sent to thousands of players with categorized or scale questions? Scale question is like from totally disagree to totally agree, something like that. Now that is quantitative. This is a little bit tricky because in survey you can also have some qualitative questions. Like if you put free form answers, people can write whatever they want, then it's qualitative. But for categorize and scale questions, you are trying to measure them on the scale and put a number into them later to analyze. So it's quantitative. All right, it's the highest climber. Okay. Next, analyze the pattern of average review score over time. So on the store, you have people rating the game from 1 star to 5 star. And it's a very important KPI for any games. A lot more people are being right this time. Let's go straight to the next one. Rate and examine each of the bad 1 star reviews. Yes, this is qualitative for the 3 people. I suppose you press the wrong button. It's a bit tricky. Well, it's also another way to think about qualitative and quantitative is qualitative doesn't scale. So when I was the product manager of this one game, I try to read as much forum posts or reviews possible to understand what is the point that make the players frustrated about the game. But it's not easy to scale at all because you spend a lot of time reading each of the answers, or each of the reviews, and sometimes you don't get much insight from it. But other times you can find a gem. Okay, and that is for the last questions in the quantitative analysis. How do you think about this? Is true or false? Yeah, my answer is this false because what does it mean to be better? Maybe quantitative analysis is more like systematic, it's more objective in some sense, but in order to build a quantitative models, you also remove a lot of the certainty of reality, like for example, the question I asked earlier, what is fun? It can be very different. There are very different type of funs for different people. And it's not it's also about the culture. Like if you want to introduce your game to a new market like China or Japan or Korea, it's not enough to just having numbers. Normally, you will need some people from the local community who have a lot of insight about how people in that country wants to play game, how they think about games, what kind of motivation that they want to have in video game, for example. So if you look up about statistic, you can see that China is the biggest market of video games in the world, but there are very, very few Western company that can put their game in China and success. Most of the success coming from Chinese companies. They have a deep understanding of the market that we game lobs actually tried a lot, but still we cannot make any kind of major hit in China. We have some moderate success, but no real big hit. So quantitative is very useful, but it's not all. I know in the research in academic is people like quantitative a lot more because numbers never lies, right? But sometimes that doesn't reflect everything about reality. That is being very strong, but two guys climbing, and the difference in the score is not too high. You have a lot of questions to catch up. Now let's go back to the slide, and we will go to the last part, which is about boosting profit with quantitative approach. So to monetize successfully, a game has three key leverage. These are three important KPI: CPI, retention, and conversion rate. So CPI is how much there is cost to acquire a new user. This is cost per install, and you can believe that it's increasing a lot this day due to the number of people, number of games being released, and the number of people, gamers cannot grow as fast as the number of games. So the cost to acquire new user by advertising is increasing every day. The second key element is retention. This is retention, and it is measured by the number of people who come back to your game after 1 day, after 7 days, or after 28 days, and so on. So normally for a good game, the number of people who come back on day 28 is only around 10 to 10%. So you can see that it is a struggle for every games to continuously trying to get more users, because by default, after 1 month, every game lose at least 90% of the players. And finally, the last KPI is conversion rate. So how many users are going to pay and for how much, right? So you can see that these three numbers, they dictate the successful of any games on profit. If this number is higher than the multiplication of this number, this is the revenue, and this is the cost, the margin cost. If you already do the production cost, already done with the production cost, you need these two numbers to, this has to be smaller than the revenue, right? So keep in mind these three KPI. And then for quantitative approach, there are three major ways that we use quantitative analysis in mobile game. First is to make decision. Second is to build models. And the last one is to optimize. Let's go to each of them. For making decisions, this is the straightforward process that you may think about when making video games or making any kind of product. First, you have some idea, and then you build the product, and then you launch and profit. Very straightforward. I have a mentoring session recently with startup founders, and they think about this. They think exactly like this. They have an idea about product, they build it, they spend 2 years building it, and they launch, and they realize that no one actually wants their product. There are a lot of problems here, because normally you have a lot of ideas, not one, and which one of them is the one worth pursuing. And for building a full product or a full game is a very costly things to do, because for a full game from Gameloft, it usually takes anywhere from 500K to $2 million to build. So you obviously cannot build all the ideas you have, and game designer, they have a lot of ideas every day, and you launch, and the profit is really a big question mark, right? So this process is not good anymore. So the way we doing things in the modern mobile game business is we put in a lot of tests in the middle. So when someone have an idea, we go almost directly to appear test. This is very interesting, because you don't even build anything except a screenshot or a video, and it's all mock, and you can say it's fake. Well, it doesn't really, it's not really fake. It's this expression of the ideas, and you pay money to advertise it on Facebook, on other games, just as if you advertise a real game. The only difference is that after the user click on the advertisement, they will be direct to a survey and not to a real game. So we will tell to them, hey, this is the game that we are going to make, but because you already click on the advertisement, let's do this survey, and when the game launch, we will give you some gift later. So this way we can measure the KPI, the CPI, because we can measure right away how many percent of people are interested in the kind of idea that we are having. So before we do the test, we put a KPI, like for example, it must be lower than 0.5 USD per install, per click, not really install, but per click. And then if it's failed, then it's immediately abandoned. No questions. If it's passed, then we, based on the survey, to have some design insight in the survey, we will ask people like, okay, so why did you click on it? Which aspect of the advertisements that make you interested in the game? Is about the art? Is about the gameplay? Or is about the story? Things like that. And we also ask them about what kind of other games you want to play. So a lot of questions to build the user profile, to know what kind of user will interest in this idea. And then we build the game, but build very fast to have a prototype, something very bare bone, only the gameplay, not a lot of content. People can only play it after a few days. And we test for retention. So at this stage, you do not have a lot of content, so people cannot play for 28 days, but we will measure the day 1 and day 7 retention. And again, we set up the KPI beforehand, before we do the test. After we do the test, we compare the actual KPI with the target. And again, a lot of games got killed right at this stage when the cost, the investment we made is still very small enough. This way we can test a lot of ideas without spending a lot of money. Right? Only after a game pass this phase and we get the confirmed direction, we do the full build and we go to soft launch. This is also something very new. Normally, I think from 2016 and before, it's not popular at all for Western company to do soft launch. Normally they go directly to global launch. They bring games to everyone in the world at the same time. But around 2016, 2015, soft launch become very popular. So we only release the game on some small and medium countries like Canada or Southeast Asia countries. We do not do any kind of advertising, any kind of marketing, and we wait to see how many people actually pay money with the soft launch version. So this way we also minimize the risk of launching something bad. And because if you install a game and it gives you a bad experience, normally you will never come back. You just uninstall it and you never come back. So there's no second chance. By doing soft launch, if there's something bad in the game, we can fix it before we launch it to the global market, right? So a very recent example is a game from Supercell. They make this game, Rush World, and only in a few countries, I think about 3 to 5 countries, they make 300,000 USD in 3 months. So if they launch the game to the global market, it can be very easily for them to make about 3 million, 3 months, 1 million a month. But still, for Supercell, it's not good enough because Supercell is really successful, and other games from them make. I think the Clash Royale already passed 1.5 billion with a B revenue in the last 4 years, so they cancel it. But so this is the sum up of all of the kind of tests. Is that you set up the target KPI first. This must be done first to remove any kind of bias. You do market research, you do competitor research, you put the target, and then you get real data from the platforms, from the tracking, and you adjust design based on data insight only if the game passed the target. If it doesn't pass the target, then there is no question about whether we should do it or not. I like this game. No, there's no like here. We just look at the data. So that is the first way we are using quantitative analysis to aid in decision making. The second way for mobile game is to build models. Now you may not, the game I show you in the video before we start is a Clash Royale. Clash Royale, and in that game you have a lot of different cards, different kind of character, and the task of the game designer is to balance everything so nothing is overpowered, and people can choose the different set of cards and they still have an equal chance of winning. So as you can see, it's a very hard task because each of the cards they have a lot of stat, like how much damage can they make in the second, how much health do they have, and how much does it cost to deploy in the game, things like that. So many factors. And the game designer, we have a special title for them. They are game economy designer. So these are the people who are, maybe they are not really creative, they're not having a lot of ideas, but they are really good with numbers. They love Excel. They love Excel, and they spend all of their days balancing the the equation, the stats. And Clash Royale also say that when they need to rebalance the cards, they depends on both players' feedback, intuition, and also data. So this is an example page of the kind of numbers that not only game designer in Clash Royale look at, but also for me as a player, it's very normal for me to go here, royalapi.com, and then look at the trending cards, look at the trending decks, look at who is winning, and adjust my play according to that. So you can see that not only the game designer are very number focused, but also for players, they put a lot of thought into this kind of thing. The second kind of models you need to have is the economy balancing, and it's like real economy. You have inflows, you have a way for money to come into the games. You can either earn it, by in-game actions, or you can buy with real money, and you have outflows. So you spend the money, the soft currency that you have to buy upgrades, to purchase, and to buy new stuff. So how do we balance this thing, given that with time there will be a lot of money in the games than at the start? So the term is inflation. It's just like in real life, but in real life, all of the governments, they try to not printing money too much to avoid inflation. But in games, you want player to buy as many money as possible. So you have to control for inflation, and you have to put a way to make sure that the price of the items go up in a way that the more people make money, it's even harder for them to actually purchase stuff. So it's also a trick that game economy designers use all the time. The price go in exponential curve. The price doesn't go into a linear like this. Okay, and the last thing is progression balancing. This is an example of the number of days a player need to take to level up in the Clash Royale game if they don't pay any money. So actually these are truncated because it cannot be fit on the chart. The actual number is 1,800. So it takes more than 3 years to be able to level up from 11 to 12 if you don't pay money. So you can see that for a new player, they can progress really fast and it makes them hook, it makes them invest in the game. But then at some point they will hit a paywall. This is the level 9 is also the challenge level. So this is the level that everyone want to reach, and this is the paywall. If you don't pay money, you can do it. If you are time rich, if you play a lot, you can still do it after 4 months. But for a lot of people, they will also pay money to get past this barrier. And once you pay money in the game, once you are way more likely to pay money again. So all of the games, they really want to optimize for the first payment. It can be very small. They can offer you a really good deal, like 90% off, 95% off for the first purchase, because they know that after you make the first purchase, you invest in the game, you will be very likely to purchase more in the future. So for the build models, this is the process. Normally you have to design the key resource and the key proceed here. The proceed is very important because, as I say, quantitative numbers is not reflecting the real reality. So let's say for a difficulty, if you want to balance the difficulty of a level, how do you measure the difficulty of a levels? You need to have proceeds. You need to have numbers like the number of mechanic, the number of enemy, and the average time it takes for an AI to play the level, for example. So we cannot give the levels to real players while developing. So for many game publishers, they actually develop AI that can play the games by itself, and then they measure the difficulty by the time it takes, the number of retries it takes for the AI to pass the levels. So those are proceeds, right? So it can be balanced in Excel based on these statistics, but you still need to confirm and tweak the model later when you introduce it to the actual players. So this is the process you build it like this. That's for the balancing and for the models. And the last application is also the one that is longest, because all of the previous things you do it during the production, and the production of the game, it can take from 2 months to 2 years, for example. But for a successful mobile games, it can be around forever. Like we have a very popular game in Hanoi studio. It's DM2, Despicable Me Minionverse, and we released the game in 2013, and until now we have 7 years and more than 60 updates. And during the whole 7 years, we do optimization constantly. So this is also the application that is most useful and popular and long. There are a lot of examples about optimization. It's about, for example, but the one that I want to focus about today is the personalized offer. So you have in Clash Royale, they have this, they have different packs, special packs that give focus on the specific cards. Like this is the card, and this is the card that this pack give the players at a very good price. So they have a question about which players should I make this pack appear in the shop, because you know that they have 21 different kind of packs. So obviously they cannot show all 21 for everyone. It will be very confusing, and it's not optimized at all, right? So the question is which one to show to which players. If you think about it from a human perspective, I think there are only about 5 to 10 criteria you can think about. Did the players play the card before? Did they ask for the cards from their friends before? Something like that, only 5 to 10. What got very interesting is that I told you before that all the games, they track every action of you. So Actually, for class Royale, there are 3,800 input signals. So the battle days, the client cast request, the account levels, the card collection, and a lot more that no human can possibly make sense of that amount of input signals. So what they do is they build a machine learning models. They take real data from user. They pick a set of user and they set up an experiment, and they was able to build a machine learning models that provide 4 times the purchase rate lift. So you can imagine that for a control set, when you show a random special offers for every players. Let's say you have 5% of people actually purchasing it. By employing the machine learning model, they can increase to around 20%. So that is a huge improvement, right? So these the things that are coming for video games. Right now, not many games can do this level of personalization. Mostly we do personalization by region, by local holidays, by the level of spending people have, by the timing in the day. But for this level, I think this is what's coming for most of the games. So that is for optimized offer. You start first by deep analysis on existing user data, and then you build experiment. It can be A/B test, or it can be machine learning models, and then you adjust and repeat with the target of increasing the revenue and KPI every update, every limited time events. Okay, so this part is a little bit long. I will let you come back to the test. Okay, let's go to the last set of questions. This will determine the winners. Arrange the correct order of these steps in the game development process. Remember to press the circle button at the bottom to submit your answer. This is a bit harder, so you have more time, but only 7 seconds left. This is the correct order, and more than 42% of you got it right. Let's go to the next one. It will be less hard, I think. Oh, that is still the top. What are the 3 main levers to improve a mobile game profit? Increase the rating, reduce cost per install, increase conversion rate, and increase retention rate. Very good, very good. For the people who are, you need for other people, you need to be a little bit faster. Hung, take the spotlight. Hung or Hung? Okay. What are the 3 effective ways to boost a game business using quantitative analysis? Really good, really good. Yeah, crunching numbers to build quarterly reports is something you have to do, like you have to do, but it's not really the most effective thing. Like it's just talking about the past, right? It's not really helping you much in improving the futures compared to other use case. Congratulations, Phương Thảo. And next one, select three things the game developer can personalize for each players. The majority of you got it right. So for the currency, actually the currency is selected by the players themselves by their App Store account. So the game developer, they cannot do anything about it. The things a game developer can do is to provide different packs for all of the available currency on the app stores. But then it's up to the app store and it's up to the user themselves to set up the right currency for their account. But everything else, the price, the content of what we are selling you, we can increase, reduce it, change it. We can introduce the offer at midnight or at lunchtime, depending on your playing behavior. That's all up to the game developers. Hang is making a comeback. Yes. Okay, what purpose can the quantitative data analysis fulfill? And you should select all applied. Okay, a lot of you want to have a build a trusting relationship with loyal players. Yeah, this is something we want to do as well, but it's not about quantitative data analysis. It's about qualitative this time. So one thing you may also not be aware of is the way customer care in video games wants answer to customer request. If you are a non-paying user, if you didn't pay any money, you rarely have the developer teams look at your problem. They will give you template answer. But if you are mega well, then there's a KPI for the customer care to answer to you right away within the 2 hours. And for those loyal players, yes, we will build a trusting relationship with them, but not by quantitative data analysis. This is the time for questions. You will have 2 minutes, and if you have any questions, please write them. But you only have 250 characters, so try to keep your questions short. So it's look like at least there will be one question. It's good. Going to be really sad if there's no question at all. And there is a sum up while we are waiting for people to submit questions. You can also send your questions via the chat if you want. You can put it in the chat in Zoom. And in the chat, I see people mention pay to win. It's one way to do IAP, but it's not the only way. You can pay to win, or you can pay to progress, and you can pay to have cosmetic items, things that just looks good but doesn't change your power in the game. So there are at least 3 types like that. Of course, players, they really prefer the kind of games that pay to progress, like Clash Royale, or for cosmetic items, like in Fortnite. Thank you. I will show the answer. Epic Games making a mistake by being removed from App Store. All very good questions. I don't think it is. Only time can tell. Only time can tell. But Epic Games is a huge company. They have the backing of the China government. They have been prepared for this action for a long time. They prepare the lawsuit. They prepare the marketing campaign. So obviously they knows what they are doing. They knows what they are doing. They are trying to have a fight. Whether they win or not, I cannot tell. Only time can tell. But they are being brave. I can tell they're being brave because 30% cut is a it's a big it's a big problem for the developers, especially small developers. How can you attract whales to spend on your game? So this is a very big questions, but generally, as I say, there are 3 types of payment. You have pay to win. You have pay to win. You have, let me try to show the slide so I can draw on it. So you have pay for power. You can pay for appearance, or you can pay for progression. Progression is different from power because power is you can win over other people in the gameplay part of the game is power. You can progress faster in the meta game. That's progression or appearance. So the way, in general, the way that we can attract well is to really dig deep into the motivation. If you learn about game design, you will see they classify player by the motivation they have for playing games, either to collect items or to kill others or to explore the environment. And everything in the game is optimized to put the best motivation possible to the players, so they may want to spend money in the game. It's both an art and a science, and if you want to know more about it, you can check out game design course on the internet. It's not easy to answer this, but also one thing to keep in mind is the value of free users. Even for user who doesn't pay money, they bring a lot of advantage to your games because they can be the one for the whale to kill, so the whales, they need real players to kill in the game so they can feel power and they feel their money will well spent. So yeah, free user is there for pay user to kill, or free user is there to boost the popularity of your game. Other people can see and bring people who have monies to join the game, bring their friends to join the games. And also the industry is also now trying to pivot into different model like subscription or advertising, and both of those models, business models, are increasing importance. They are not yet being able to catch up with IAP, but they are increasing. And I believe more ways to innovate in the monetization aspect will continue. What mathematic models? This you can search on the web and search for the game economy design. Game economy design, because each game is very different. There are games about buildings, about collection. They are different from racing game. They are different from fighting games. So for each kind of games, there are recommend models that the industry use. Right? So you need to research more about that by yourself. What math course in college are more important to quantitative developers? Just basic math and statistics. I think statistics is the most important, because statistics you can use it not only for developing games but for everything else, for business, for common sense, for understanding the news, for understanding the research in the academic world. So definitely go check out statistics. Can you send out the records? Yeah, sure. How a developer balance heavily RNG based game. This, I told you this term before, is echo table. Is the term in the industry that we know, that we use, and we normally use Excel, but also we have game specific tool that we build just for the game. So in many of the big games, actually the first few months, there are people who building the tool to allow them to balance the game later. So building the tool to allow them to change the model, change the numbers, and have the AI to play the game by itself. Most of the big games, they have that. And the more you're doing similar games, the more you can try to reuse the tool. Can the game still run if it does not have much whale and mega whale players? No. For big game, no. But there are now games like a hyper casual, or games that are only earning money from advertising. And those kind of games, they doesn't care about whale, mega whale. They only care about retention and about having as many players as possible. But I really don't think they are the future, because it's very costly to acquire user this day, and the revenue from advertising is very low. It doesn't I don't think it's sustainable. So right now, only very small studios can run using advertising only. I knew a lot of studios in Hanoi or in Vietnam. They have only 3 to 4 developers. They churn out games every 2 weeks, very simple games, and they can run well, but they cannot scale. They will never become a big studio with 50, 100 people doing big games. For big games, you still need IAP or subscription. Advertising alone is not enough, I think. For me, I only look at the KPI and try to analyze the report, analyze the tracking, because I'm managing many games, and they are experts in each of the team. They are game designer, they are game managers, and they do the actual analysis work. What I needed only to understand, are they doing the correcting or not, by monitoring and double check their work. Okay. What if the players use program to block the tracking? Can you still track their actions? I'm not sure what programs you are talking about. Of course, there will be ways to do it, but it's very hard. It's very hard, because even if you are not going online, the games will try to save the tracking locally as a file, as a temporary file, and then they submit it to the server later. If you really want to block the tracking, you need to be able to have a tool that can block internet data based on specific IP or based on specific domain. And I think it's possible, but normally users don't do that. And we don't really need to care about the few very hardcore players who try to do that. Which machine learning model do you use? The example I gave is from Clash Royale, is from Supercell. In Gameloft, I cannot disclose information about games in Gameloft, so I recommend you to check out this video from Clash Royale. I will send you the link later. I will send you the link later. So, but for Gameloft, I cannot share that. Sorry. Okay, what disadvantage that you think quantitative analysis may bring about? So I kind of mentioned this before. The main disadvantage is that quantitative, to be able to measure things, you have to use proxy. You have to remove a lot of the subtle difference, the subtlety in how human thinks. So you really should have both. You should have both quantitative and qualitative thinking, and you should not make data driven decision making. This is the term that was very popular a few years ago. They talk about driven, but now it's more about data informed decision making. So you look at the quantitative data, it tells you a stories, and then you use your experience and your intuition to see if the story really makes sense or not. And if you think it doesn't make sense, and you may try to bring in some different perspective or recheck the data again. So I think the disadvantage is also the biggest advantage of quantitative analysis is also the disadvantage. The advantage of quantitative analysis is bring certainty, but too much certainty is not good because the world is very uncertain. You cannot be certain about anything in the world. So you have to keep an open mind and doesn't blindly follow the numbers and blindly follows what the report tell you. Okay, this is the part that I talk about the appearance test. So that is the way that many people in the industry are doing. So they do not develop the idea, they just make a video or make a several screenshots of their idea, and they actually test this. They pay real money to advertise the screenshot and the video on the on Facebook, on other games, and see if people actually click on that and how much that costs to have a new user. So that's one way, that's a popular way to do it. Of course, as I said, there's no way to be 100% certain. But if you do this kind of test and you have a very good KPI, you can be more certain that these ideas have some meat in it. It can be successful. Okay, and now it's the last question for the win. So these are bonus questions. If you really pay attention, then you can answer it, but it's kind of fun. Bonus question for the win. When was Gameloft Hanoi Studio established? Thank you. There are 6 people who answer is right. Okay, so 2004. Choose 2004. That's the year that Gameloft joined Vietnam. So Gameloft was established in 2000. In 2004, they opened office in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and in 2011, it's opened in Hanoi. So let's see who are the winners. Okay, these are the 3 winners. Don't close your Kahoot just yet. I have take a screenshot for Han. Please type for all three. Please reconfirm your student ID in the Zoom chat room, and I will send the got it voucher to your teacher. And please do not close Kahoot, and please give your feedback about the sessions today. So it's the feedback is for the they say that give feedback for the Kahoot, but basically you can give feedback for the whole sessions. And I'm done with talking. If you have any extra question, you can steer on the mic.
Zong, that was terrific. Thanks so much for sharing. Let me turn my video on here. I'm amazed at all the work that you put into this. This is really incredible, and it's very interesting. I mean, I have a ton of questions more for you, but I'm very cognitive of the time, and so I'll save them for later. But I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. I know there were some questions regarding this getting the video. I think we can make that available. But yeah, again, so just thank you so much for taking the time to share with us about all that goes on in the analysis of making games and monetizing them. So thank you.
I hope you find interesting, because for many students, they don't really think about working in the video game industry as something serious, right? So they kind of think lowly about video game. They don't think it's a big business. They don't think they can build a career there as a business people. Well, actually, it's a huge business, and you are welcome to join from any part of life. You can be a number guy, you can be a drawing guy, you can be a business guy, and there will be place in the video game industry for you.
The comments are good too. Thanks, Sung. I'm gonna end this now. But again, I guess you got the contact details for